let's talk about Light's Wrath! I am in the middle of building it, so this is totally a in the middle of the process video. So there are going to be answers to questions that I do not have. And solutions to problems that I don't have because I'm not quite there yet. But I'd like to at least show how I got to where I am. And a lot of the pictures I've been posting on Instagram are kind of these stills. And they don't really show the inner workings, and that's part of what I like to do, is to kind of share the insides, the guts that make it up, because although it can look great on the outside, I think a lot of people tend to struggle, right? I'm sure you do. Okay, Angela, shut up. Let's get to the meat of what you're watching this video for, right? So, okay, meat. Here's one of the pieces that I am working on, the bottom half, and there are pieces that simply cover sections, right? So this skeleton that I've built, the dowel lives in this space, and I have to work around it and, building little holes for the dowel to sit in and be concealed by. And work to my benefit instead of, right, I build up the whole shape and then I try to Dremel out a hole. That doesn't exactly work because it's tedious, but what I can at least do is I know the shape. I can cut several pieces of that shape, and then I place that shape, one of the shapes, where it would live here, and I sketch with a pencil or something, right? This is where the dowel will be. And then I cut one of them pieces. Technically two, right? And then I just remove the centerpiece, I glue them all together, I sand it down, and then this one actually I remembered at the end that I actually don't like the way a sanded top piece would look, because you don't always get a completely flush surface. So I decided to cover it with another layer of foam. Kind of has caused me slight problems, but those are things that you're going to learn, right? And by problems, I just mean it made it a lot thicker than I originally had planned for it to be. It probably doesn't look like too much of a problem from this angle, and maybe it's not once I get everything else made, but I cut the shape, the original shape, to the size that I wanted, and when you add pieces to it, you typically want to subtract something from it if you have that shape. Anyways, and this is basically the approach that I'm taking, is that I'm working around a skeleton frame. And a lot of the props that I've done before, if you've seen, the skeleton frame is almost always a solid piece of foam that I'm then carving down to the shape, or a solid piece of something. And this staff doesn't work like that because it's just too many shapes that are varying in size, and so I just have to take a different method here. The other part of this that's kind of nice, I get a little more consistency with how the shapes are built, and can get a little more refined with the results. So they're just, again, stacks of rings, and there is always a hole in the middle where the dowel goes through. And I just happened to have a drill bit that came in one of a kit I bought on Amazon. It was cordless drill with screwdrivers and drill bits and all these good things, and it had a circular drill, which I might actually, yes I do, it's right here. It actually was the same exact size as the dowel, so I just, sorry about that, actually just really lucked out on that one. So all I really did, let me find the shape that's floating around here, right? I would cut a shape that I wanted, and I would cut several of the shapes over and over and over I would eyeball. Not always the best idea, but I would basically eyeball about where I thought the center, that's actually looks a little off, about where the center of this is, right? And all I would do then, I will do it while I'm holding it. I think this is a scrap piece, but I will show you more or less what I did. And then I would just push on a flat surface, not holding it. Like, I would literally do this. And basically it made a little indent circle. And then an X-Acto knife, cut around, just over and over and over. And let me tell you, that is the most tedious thing in the world. I am saving these for something, I don't know, trophy, maybe? It's a lot. It's a lot of little circles. But the time spent on this, I think, is kind of showing, if you take a little more time up front to do things, it will help you in the long term get a little closer to kind of what the end result is. That's my opinion. Take it or leave it. And then, right, like, section by section, piece by piece, you're just layers of foam, circle in the middle where it's kind of wrapping around the dowel. And then I'm also sanding in the curvature. I'm not forcing the foam to take a certain shape. I am putting the shape into the foam, if that makes sense. And so there are places that I need to go in and do a little more dremeling, right? Like here, I need to dremel up, and then that will create a little divot here for this one, and then I probably just need to expand out so the divot here isn't so harsh. And that's more or less how I have built around the framework. And I will show the larger one now. Whee! And so I have a wall here, so I can't. Okay. The top one is just a larger scale of the bottom one. It's not as refined yet, but the concepts carry through. Again, right, like little slit, multiple pieces glued together, acts more like a cover. Here, these pieces, the dowel just kind of goes through, and each one is its own piece. They are not all one piece. Again, I can't stress that enough, the importance of like single pieces instead of one large piece that you're trying to carve down, or else if you mess up one small section, you've messed up the entire piece, is the best way I could explain it. So keeping them small, containable, but in sections that make sense. So, yes. There are pieces that I will say are taking me a little longer than I expected. For example, this one, it's this kind of squarish with tapered, like it's not a pyramid, but I don't know what to call it when it's a four-side quadruped, making words up. It's just taking a lot more refinement. So this method definitely requires a lot more patience and a little more time to really get to the shape you want. But I feel like the results are getting a lot closer to what I really want out of this. But there, as you can see, a lot of sanding left to do. There are pieces that aren't as smooth as I'd like just yet. Some of the shapes are just a little off balance. Some of them just aren't there at all. This one's still a lot bulkier than what I want. But I also, again, have to, this is that section, right? Like these sides need to sand up, and right here needs to go down, and it needs to match. They kind of need to, they're like puzzle pieces, right? Like one side's shaped one way, and then you have to make the opposite shape so they fit together. And that's kind of fun. So yeah, if you are considering this method, a belt sander is a lifesaver here. but it is the messiest thing I have ever done, and it's not an indoor activity, and I'm doing it indoors. It's just messy, so don't take that with a grain of salt. You can do it, but I warned you of the consequences. Yeah, and then I will probably do another follow-up video about some of the inner workings. Like, I definitely plan, there are floating pieces here, so I definitely plan to show kind of how I'm going to solve for those floating pieces. Actually, as now I'm looking at that, I think I've messed up again already. I will talk through that right now. Why do I think I messed up already after I've already made these pieces? So I'm inserting a plastic ring into the middle here, and that plastic ring needs to be connected to this. So my groove, it's good, but if there's something here, I can't just slide that on. So, and I need the plastic ring to technically be touching all of this, right? Like, this is the bone structure, and once I add foam to it, it should be a lot sturdier. But what that means is, instead of these like covering pieces, I have to cut it back. I will cut it apart. It's not a lost cause. I just have to cut it apart, sand the piece that I cut here, and I'm still doing the same thing, right? Like, I'm going to cover on both sides. Just instead of it being like this, it's just gonna get glued on both sides because stuff. Ugh. But those are the things that you learn, and that's why I do encourage not gluing until the last possible moment, because had I glued that, I would have been screwed, and I would have had to restart a lot of pieces and cut a lot of things that I wouldn't have needed to cut. Yeah, I don't know what else to say to that. But I think it's kind of humorous that, at least during a video, I exposed, like, I don't have everything solved for. I think I mentioned that. There are things I can't solve for until I get to them. As much as I plan and think that I know with any project, right? Like, there are going to be pieces that you kind of get to, that you just have to figure out on your own. But I don't know. This method feels like it's doing something well. Alright, I've chatted enough. I don't know if this helps. If it does, let me know. If not, let me know. Okay, bye!